Thank you very much. I'm wired up. Am I coming through? Good. All right. A lot of stuff this morning for you from various people. I'm going to try and make good use of my time. The Gilbreath Principle, what is it? Well, it is a mathematical characteristic that involves the Riffle Shuffle. Playing cards date back about 1,000 years, just over that. They start off in China, they make their way west down the Silk Road through India, Persia, and Egypt, and eventually by the mid-1300s they get to Europe. Now, as the initial use of these cards is for gambling games, one of the first things you need to do if you're going to do something with cards and play a game with them is you need to mix them. So people work out various different ways of mixing cards. The most prevalent way then as now is the overhand shuffle, which is done from a different grip in Asia, but it's the same thing. The overhand shuffle became the sort of standard. A few others came into being, the Haymo shuffle, the washing shuffle, but the overhand shuffle was really the standard way of shuffling around the world until we move into the latter part of the 19th century, at which point playing cards are being manufactured using better machinery and mass-produced in ways that make the cards more uniform. And that's when the Riffle Shuffle comes into being. Everybody's familiar with the Riffle Shuffle when you the packets together? And this is perceived, it's an American invention, it's perceived as being a much better shuffle than overhand, and much more sophisticated and a better mixing. It isn't, but it looks good. It takes about 2,500 overhand shuffles to render a deck genuinely random. That's a lot. As we know from the work done by Percy Diaconis and David Bayer in 1992, it takes approximately 7 Riffle shuffles to randomize a deck of cards. So it's obviously much more efficient. However, before you get to that point of 7 shuffles, it's not a very efficient shuffle at all. And it turns out it's very easy to backtrack certain pieces of information about a Riffle shuffle if you're not doing it 7 or more times. The earliest person to recognize this in the magic world was an Englishman named C.O. Williams, who wrote about the inefficiency of the Riffle Shuffle in Stanion's Magic magazine in 1913. This notion was further popularized by Charles T. Jordan, a name that may be familiar to those of you who were fans of Martin, since he wrote about Jordan quite a number of times, who also talked about the inefficiency of the Riffle Shuffle. Now we move forward to about 1955, and a gentleman in California, an engineer who's still very much alive, named Norman Gilbreath, discovers a principle. He's examining what happens when you Riffle Shuffle a deck when you have a starting pattern that you're aware of. So what happens to that pattern as it is riffled? And specifically what happens with a cyclical pattern that is riffled into its reverse. And the result is something that is now known as the Gilbreath Principle. After playing with the idea for a few years, Norman published a trick using the idea called magnetic colors. It appeared in a magazine called The Linking Ring, which is a magician's magazine, in 1958. 2 years later, in 1960, I think in the August issue of Scientific American, Martin had a column entitled An Imaginary Conversation on Mathemagic, in which Martin ostensibly had a dialogue with a character named Victor Eigen, and they discussed some of the latest stuff in mathematical magic. And one of the things that Martin explained was the Gilbreath Principle. That's where I first encountered it back in 1960. I was very small. And it has haunted me ever since. It is an extraordinary principle. And there are a lot of things you can do with it. And I have come up with a lot of things to do with it over the years, quite many dozens of tricks involving the Gilbreath Principle. So I thought today I would show a few of them to you. I'm not going to break them down. You understand that they are based on the Gilbreath Principle, so I've given you the skeletal structure of what I'm going to do. You will see the skin, as it were. You will know the skeleton. You'll have a hard time putting in the tissues and muscles, but that's your problem. Let me get a couple of people to join me here, and we'll try a Gilbreath Principle thing. So we'll get how about the gentleman over there? Could you join me? The one looking behind him, wondering who I'm talking to? He doesn't want to come. How about you? All right, nice round of applause for this gentleman here. And we'll get someone from over on this side. How about the gentleman there in the orange? Yes? Just jump right up. We've got stairs on the sides. Hi, what's your name?
Jaap.
Jaap. All right. From where?
The Netherlands.
Oh, Nederlands is moeilijk voor mij. And how are you?
I'm good.
And your name is Carl.
Yes.
I'm assuming that's American. Okay. One of the most obvious things you could do with the Gilbreath principle would be a prediction of some sort. If the Gilbreath principle has to do with knowing what happens to information set up in a deck of cards once it is mixed, predictions would make sense. That's why I'm going to try and make this twice as hard. Because this is a prediction for you, Carl. Don't open it up yet. This is a prediction for you, Jaap. So just hold them or set them on the table in front of you. Deck of playing cards, they're all there, I promise you. And we're going to make this very simple. We start in a random location. So would you cut off some cards, make it less than half, just so that we have enough left to work with? Fair enough. Pick up the remaining cards. You can cut more than that. You can cut a few more. All right, so now we're somewhere in the mix. Pick up the deck. And because this is the Gathering for Gardener number 12, deal 12 cards. Nicely done. But because there are 2 spectators up here, we need to deal another 12 on top of that. Yeah. This would be a completely different trick if this was the 11th Gathering for Gardener. All right, the rest of that goes away. So we have a genuinely random cluster of cards, all right? But we're going to randomize this even further. Pick those up, square them up. Here, we'll put in an element I couldn't know about. Think of a number, let's say, from 10 to 15. You got one? Deal that many cards into a pile there. So this is something I couldn't control. I wouldn't know how many cards he's going to think of as far as what he'll deal. I'm not even bothering to count, although I suppose I could. But now we have 2 piles, and the exact place in those piles has been determined by you. Okay? Carl, do you know how to do a riffle shuffle?
No.
That's all right. We'll make, no, that's okay. Fortunately, Paul Curry solved this problem years ago. I'm just going to take the 2 halves. You smush them together.
Okay.
I don't know if you can tell. That's excellent smushing ability. All right? So now they're smushed. They're really mixed. So you took cards from wherever you wanted, right?
Yep.
And you divided them as you wanted, and then you smushed them together.
Yep.
Deal 12 cards, and those will be 1 set. And that leaves 12 more. Now, yeah, all during this, you haven't gotten to do anything. But that's because you get to make the most important choice. There are 2 piles here. And I think you'd agree the way we've gotten to these 2 piles is as fair as can possibly be. Yeah? You get to choose which of the 2 piles you will use. Carl gets the other one. Which pile do you want?
The one nearest me.
This one? Please take it. And Carl, you get the other one. All right? Let's do this. Count the number of picture cards in your group. Jacks, queens, and kings, in other words. And for you, let's count the number of red cards, okay? Yeah. So, not so many cards, so how many?
3.
3, all right. 3 picture cards.
Yes.
And how many red cards do you have? 8. 8 and 3 does not even add to 12, so it doesn't seem like there's a relationship. But you have 8 red cards, and now let's reconstruct here. Everything was done by them, right? They took whatever group they wanted from wherever they wanted. They cut, they shuffled, or smushed. And the end result is that you have 3, and you got to decide which group. 3 court cards, 8 red cards. Please open your predictions, and they're big enough that you can show them to everyone as you read them out. This one says
You will have exactly 8 red
you will have exactly 8 red cards, and this one says
You will have exactly 3 court cards.
that is the Gilbert Principle. Thank you very much for coming. Oh, you can keep that as a souvenir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Give them both a round of applause as they go back to their seat. Without going into any real detail, I'll explain that this is something that I refer to as a schizoid Gilbreath arrangement. The Gilbert Principle is to me like a mine where you're digging and you keep finding new untapped veins of gold or what have you. There's always more to be found. And over the years, I have worked with the Gilbreath Principle, not simply using playing cards, but using currency, using coins, using dominoes, using three-sided playing cards. I have, actually. And a lot of other different things. So with that in mind, we'll try something involving the Gilbert Principle and something that is not playing cards. And I think for this next thing, we're going to get Mark Setaducati because he forced me into doing this. So, Mark. I should point out that sometimes a riffle shuffle doesn't look like a riffle shuffle, and this is an example of that. We're going to use just 10 cards. They're not playing cards. They are cards with designs on them. Some of you will recognize this particular set of designs. They are referred to as Zener Signs. These are a set of 5 symbols that were developed in the late 1920s at Duke University under the auspices of Dr. J.B. Ryan, a name that for some skeptical groups immediately produces hissing. These are ESP testing symbols. So in this case, we have a set of 10. So we have 2 circles, 2 squares, 2 wavy lines, or as some people like to call it, bacon, 2 crosses, and finally, and I know this is going to be a little hard to see. No, the camera actually picks it up well. These are stars. They're yellow, so if it looks blank far in the back, that means it's the star. So we have 2 sets of these 5 designs. I'm sure, Mark, that you are familiar with these. Let's do this. We'll start with these in a random order, and I'll ask you to take them, give them a complete cut. So we don't even know where we're starting from, all right? You're going to put these into a new order, and here's how this works. You may deal 1 card to the table. You may deal from the top or the bottom. Now, you don't have to be like Jason England and make it impossible to see when you're dealing from the bottom. It's all right if they know. But this is up to you. So deal a card from the top or the bottom onto the table, face down.
Take the top.
All right, and now deal a card on top of that. But again, you may choose to deal from the top or the bottom.
Take top again.
All right. Keep going.
I'll take the bottom.
Ah, okay. So what Mark is doing, just keep going. Every time he gets to choose top or bottom, so he is putting these out in a new order.
Bottom.
Right?
Bottom again.
There's no way I can control his
One more
choices as to
bottom.
when he deals from the top or when he deals from the
Now
bottom.
top.
So I think it's fair to say that whatever the order of these designs is,
And the final
it's
chord.
out of my control. Is that fair? All right. Pick them up. We don't know where anything is, but we're going to try something anyway. We'll do a little spelling game. And we'll start with star. So spell the word star, transferring 1 card from the top to the bottom. So that's S-T-A-R. Nicely done. Deal that card, the card you've arrived at, over here, okay? Let's go for square. So S-Q-U-A-R-E, and that card gets dealt here.
Right there.
Yeah, they can get together. Let's try the hardest one, wavy lines.
Okay.
W.
It's early.
Yes. A. V. Y. L.
I-N-E-S.
And that goes here. Cross, that's a little easier.
Okay.
Go ahead.
C-R-O-S-S.
That goes here. And the last one we haven't done yet, is circle.
C-I-R-C-L-E.
Okay.
And that one goes.
So what Mark has done here is he mixed up the order of the cards, and then he dealt out the names of the 5 different symbols, which is why it's rather surprising that what he dealt away is a complete and discrete set, 1 of each design, and what he has left in his hand is a complete set, 1 of each design. Nicely done, Mark, and I thank you very much for that. So let me give you one more example of what can be done with the Gilbert Principle. And in this case, I'll show you something that I know for a fact I did not do when I did a version of this in 1996. I was trying to think back what pieces I had performed in 96. I know that I did this one with the designs because in 1996 it was brand new. So I do remember that I did that. I may or may not have done the first thing I did with the two predictions. That dates back to 1988. This one is only a few years old, so I know I didn't do it in 1996, but I'd like to show it to you now. And I'd like to get two people to join me on the stage. Here's the deal. I need one person who knows how to riffle shuffle. And I need one person who knows how to type onto a computer. The latter should be pretty much anyone here. Did you raise your hands regarding a riffle shuffle? Come and join me on the stage. You get a nice round of applause. And who's in a typing mood? Who is in a typing mood? Who could enter some information onto a computer? I know it's early in the morning, but there, gentleman back there, come and join me on the stage. You don't have to bring a computer. We have one here. Hi there. And you are? Robert. Hi, Robert. Nice to see you. And your companion is joining us. What is your name, sir? Roger. Roger and Robert. Sounds like a comedy duo. If you would, we have a laptop sitting right there. And as far as I know, it should be on. Is it? It is on. All right. In a moment, you're going to click on the icon for Google. But you don't do it yet. We'll get there. Because this is not just a card trick. I'm going for something more profound. Because I maintain that even though we're doing something that has sort of the characteristics of a card trick, it has much greater profundity. We're going to use a deck of cards to play a game. And by that game, we are going to learn the answer to life, the universe, and everything. That's pretty heavy. All right. So I will never touch the deck. I will give that to you. You take the cards out of the case, Robert, and make sure there's no extras in the case. Set the case off to the side. Put the cards face down on the table. All right? Now we're going to play a little game called Cards Broadway, and the game is done with 6 cards, obviously. So, you know, you've heard of 5-card draw poker or 7-card stud. This uses a 6-card hand. But to get there, that's where it gets interesting. I want you to cut the deck in half. Turn either half face up. Your choice. Riffle shuffle the two halves together. So now we have a mixture of face up and face down cards, or we will in just a moment. Nicely done. All right, so table the deck. Now in a moment, we're going to take the top 6 cards. But I want to give you a series of choices, because that's what life is about. If you're going to go for the answer to life, the universe, and everything, life involves choices. We can leave the deck where it is, or we can turn the entire deck over and work from the other side. You decide. He's turned the deck over. All right, the deck is shuffled. You've decided where we're going to work from. We can take, since it's a mix of face up and face down, we can take the first 6 face up cards, or we can take the first 6 face down cards, or we can simply take the first cards, whether they are face up or face down. What do you prefer? Just the face down cards. Would you start dealing from the top and put the first 6 face down cards aside? So, oh, a bunch of face up cards. There we go. There's a face down card. Good. There's another. 3, yeah. 4, 5, and 6. Pretty fair. I haven't touched the cards. You turn whichever half you wanted face up, you mix them together, you decided whether to work from the top or the bottom, you decided whether to go with face up, face down, or a mix. You've arrived at 6 cards. The idea is to add the values of those cards together to come up with a total. Couldn't be more fair than that. If I were any more fair, he'd be doing the routine for me. Now, we add the values such that aces are 1, jacks are 11, queens are 12, kings are 13, fairly standard. So would you carefully add together those 4 cards? We don't care about the suits. 9 of hearts, okay, so a 9. A 5 brings to 14, yeah. 6, 20, yeah.
8, 28.
Right.
3, 31.
Yeah.
And the jack, so that's 42.
42. All right. Would you don't get ahead of me. Would you click onto Google, please? Yeah, that'll work. I like the fact that half the audience, the trick's over. But for the rest of you, you're on Google. Would you type into the top there the answer to life, the universe, and everything? If you like, click on it. Thank you very much. You can take the deck as a souvenir. I want to just make sure that it's clear that it's a legitimate deck, so that's yours to take home. Thank you so much for your expert typing. I appreciate that. Round of applause for these two gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me to spend a few minutes with you exploring the Gilbreath principle. Now that you understand exactly how these 3 tricks were done, you can go on and invent your own. Have a good day.